Welcome to Unscripted with Russo. For our podcast, we decided to explore the people behind the narratives. I'll introduce decision makers and influencers and find out the intimate story behind their rise to success. Welcome to another edition of Unscripted with Russo. I am here with Hasshan Batts, the Executive Director of Promise Neighborhoods of the Lehigh Valley, and just a force to be reckoned with in our region. Hasshan, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me, Ash. Just excited to share this space with you.
Same. It's been so great getting to know you better and see the work that you're doing in the community. We've had some crossover through United Way, and I love the work of Promise Neighborhoods. But before we get into that, I kind of want to go backwards a little bit in time and let people get to know you a little bit better. Where were you born and raised? What was sort of your family structure? Tell me a little bit about that.
Okay. So you want the long version, the medium version?
I mean, this is our podcast. We can do whatever we want.
It was a hot summer day in May 1975 in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, right? Who I am is centered so much in where I'm from. So I'm a 70s/80s baby, Brooklyn, New York. I mean, I grew up in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, raised by my mother and my grandmother, in a home with my brother, and like just the neighborhood and the experience has contributed so much to my decision making, to my life. I grew up in a diverse community, so I don't know how familiar you are with Crown Heights, but this is a community that has a lot of folks that are from the Caribbean, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, and a large Hasidic Jewish community. So there was like all of those dynamics going on in the 80s, late 90s too, as well as, I mean, I don't know how many listeners are familiar with this, like this crack epidemic that really hit the community.
Yeah.
At that point, had a strong influence on my life.
Hasshan, you mentioned being raised by your mother and grandmother. My husband was the same situation. Tell me a little bit about that dynamic and also what you believe that influence had of two strong women in your life.
I mean, just from the foundation, it instilled a love for Black women in me, right? Like that's unwavering. And the strength and resilience and brilliance and power. Mama Batts was a Black Panther, so that cultural aspect that came to me, you know, it was constantly this love of our culture and who we are was constantly instilled in us. My grandmother, you know, worked through struggles that I could never imagine. And they had a belief in education, and I don't mean just necessarily formal education, but in educating yourself and preparing yourself for this world and overcoming the obstacles that you would experience. So that has carried over into the way I live my life. In addition to, like I said, my mother was a Panther, so there was really this idea of giving back to your community, right? So the work that I do, the way in which I live, is centered in the messages that I was taught growing up.
Yes, it makes sense. So foundational in who you are. Tell me about the kind of kid you were. If I were to look at you at 7, 8, meet you then, you know, were you into sports? Were you into music? Were you into hanging with your friends? Like what was your kind of childhood existence, those formative years?
I've been on a lot of shows and podcasts, and no one has ever asked these questions before. So this is different, right? But so again, it goes back to the community that I'm from and the work that I do. So the community I was from really wrestled with poverty and community disinvestment. So they didn't have those things. So I didn't have the opportunity to play soccer, football, basketball, play the clarinet. That this wasn't that time period, right? This was a time period where there was no investment in the community. Even the work that I do today, we talk a lot about the idea that there are no free basketball teams in the city for youth. I can relate to that, right? So what was it like growing up? I mean, I had, in school was difficult for me. I had behavioral challenges, they would say, but it's because I didn't really fit in and belong, right? In terms of what I enjoyed to do, I just went outside and played. You know, I hung out with my friends and we just played.
Remember the days when that was a possibility? I mean, it's funny. I've all of a sudden crossed over to describing that to my kids and sort of sounding like the old I trudged through snow. But, you know, I lived near town. I mean, I wasn't in a city, but I lived near town. I was able to, you know, take like a quarter and, you know, walk into town and hang. We used to hang at the library. I told my kids I used to go to the library and listen to cassettes of stories. I don't know. They thought that was crazy, but it's a different time. You know, what did you do to overcome sort of the struggles that you had in school? I mean, did that stick with you? And because I know you went on, and we'll talk about this as we go on, to obtain a lot of education, but I think those formative years where school's a struggle, how did you overcome that?
I didn't for a long time, but my mother adored me. She loved me. She was brilliant. Like I still would say she's probably the most intelligent person that I ever met. Um, and she just instilled like confidence and hope in me, right? So she would show me how systems were broken. So I remember one time, like I remember it very vividly. I was left back in kindergarten, and we're sitting behind this big desk and the principal's there, and the principal's like, I didn't talk till I was like 4 or 5 years old, right? So she's like, the principal's like, he doesn't speak, he can't talk, and my mother's like, this is Mama Batts, man. My mother's about 4'10", like, but fierce. So my mother says, he just doesn't have anything to say to you. He talks to me all the time.
Hmm.
and and I remember that, right? And like now as a grandfather, my grandson doesn't speak much, but he speaks to me. So it was that I was empowered that I can talk, I am brilliant, I'm just not in settings where uh I'm being stimulated. So then the principal says, well, he can't learn, right? Now imagine this, I'm 4 or 5 years old, I remember this, and my mother says, maybe you can't teach because he learns from me every day. I'm 47 years old, and I remember this dialogue going back and forth. Um, and those type of interactions were the seeds that were planted in me. It might have taken until I was 20 and 30 for them to really sprout, but
Hmm.
that was because I was in environments that didn't nurture me.
But it's interesting how you feel like maybe that was sort of the seed that helped propel you
Yeah.
to prove that principle and probably many others wrong.
Yeah, because she constantly told me how brilliant I was, right? And how special I was. And I was telling Qatar, my wife, the other day, I said, I never thought about it, but maybe I was just regular. I was just ordinary. But my mother told me I was special so much that I began to believe in and live into it.
Wow, isn't that powerful? It's amazing. And it
Right?
shows the power of words and influence of people in our lives, whether it be our parents or people in the community or in our neighborhood,
That's
that
right.
it means a lot when someone says that to you on a regular basis. As you got into high school, did you have a job? Did you work part-time? And if so, what was that?
I mean, I tried little jobs here and there. I moved from Brooklyn to Pennsylvania when I was 16 years old, so I did a little bit of I tried telemarketing. I tried like
Well, what was that? Way to let me stop you out there. What was that like? Because 16 years old, my gosh, that's such a
that was culture shock. Yeah, that was culture shock. And so from probably 11 to 16, and this sounds strange to people that haven't experienced and grown up in these environments, right? I was caught up in all kind of things I shouldn't have been caught up in. So we're talking about gangs and fights and violence and crime and drugs and things like that. Just as a product of the environment that I was reared up in. So my mother had a place in the Poconos, so I moved with her to the Poconos, like for this change of scenery. Um, and she would always try to get me to do things the right way. And again, that sounds odd, right? Like not being from where I'm from, but I said I'm gonna give it a shot. And I came to the Poconos, and I would try, and I'd slip up and get caught up a little bit. I mean, we had just the time and the place that we were from was just different. So I didn't work much when I was young.
well, I want to use this as a little bit of a break, but we're going to come back. And when we come back, I want to talk about when you started to find education and where your life took a turn and sort of that next chapter. So stick with us. You're listening to Unscripted with Russo. Home to the Iron Pigs in Dorney Park, Allentown is a city without limits. Food, art, dance, you name it, it's got it. Allentown's historic roots are matched with its vibrant culture to create an adventure that you'll never forget. Thinking of taking a trip? Follow Lehigh Valley, PA on Instagram, and you'll find attractions, hotels, and sites you won't want to miss. Welcome back to Unscripted with Russo. I'm Ashley Russo, and I am being joined by a really amazing man today, Hasshan Batts. He is the executive director of Promise Neighborhoods, Lehigh Valley. But he is also just a great friend to us, to me, to United Way, to our community. And Hasshan, it's been awesome learning a little bit about your childhood and growing up and the influences you had. You talked a little bit in the last segment about struggling a little bit from 11 to 16 and being a product of the environment you were in, not having the opportunities to stay out of trouble, so to speak, and then moving to the Poconos at that pivotal age. So talk to me a little bit about like 16 to say 21. What were you doing at that point? Where did education fall? Where did work fall? And how did you start to find the path that you're on today?
Yeah, so 16 to 21, I would say was really a continuation of my formative years, right? I still hadn't found the path, but I began to, my brain is developing more. I'm getting new relationships. I'm in a different environment, so I'm seeing different options. I'm seeing kids play football and things like things that I hadn't been exposed to before. And I'm like, I'm 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 learning of alternative ways of being, right. So I joined the football team for a little bit. I believe it or not, I was a cheerleader for a little. So I began to learn about team sports. I had a lot of leadership skills, but I often tell people I didn't hone my leadership skills through the Boy Scouts, right? This was through gangs that my leadership skills were honed. So
Mm,
I had the opportunity to see a different side of life and how people lived. Um, and things that my mother had been trying to show and teach you the entire time. So I would say that was like a settling time for me of I wouldn't call it peace because there was a lot of racism and those kind of dynamics, but not like interpersonal violence with weapons and fights every day and things like that. So I was able to find some calm and reflect and strategize and plan. Still had a lot of trouble in school. And at this point though, it wasn't academic, right? It was I was coming into understanding that I had always been brilliant, as my mother had told me, right? So I didn't have the academic struggles, but I had the struggles of belonging, which
mm,
show up in many different ways. I didn't even have the same behavioral challenges because I was in a different environment, right? I didn't have to defend myself in the same ways that I did before. But so I developed a different relationship with education. Whereas when I was in Brooklyn, I just didn't go. You know, I got kicked out of every high school in Brooklyn. Probably, I was locked up young in juvenile facility. I was in adult facilities at 15 years old, right? So I had a lot going on. But you removed me from the environment. I was able to calm, slow down a little bit. So I went to high school. I ended up getting pushed out of high school. But what I did realize was I had a drive in me that it took me years to really take note to, right? So as I said, I was pushed out of high school at maybe 18 years old. Um, but I went back and got my GED. Don't ask me why, right? I just did it. And then I started to go to community college. Um, I wasn't living the perfect life, but there was this part of me that knew that education was necessary. And my mother would always say to me, "You're gonna work hard in your life. You're either gonna work hard with your back or hard with your brain, and the choice is yours." And I'm not a big guy. I have soft hands, so
That's
I
a really good way to put it. I don't think I've ever heard that term, right? You're going to work hard with your back or your brain.
yeah,
That's a great life lesson. You talked about the change of environment, and I know that a lot of the work you do today, Hasshan, is to create environments that allow youth and kids to feel safe, to feel seen, to
that's right.
feel encouraged. How much did that matter to you and to who you are today? And how much has it influenced the work that you're doing now? Because
I
environment,
think as
sometimes we don't pay attention to that,
That's
especially
right.
those of us who grew up in privileged environments, right? We don't think about, wow, this is privileged, or this is lucky, or this is different, or this is encouraging. And so I want you to just touch on what that shift and that exposure to other things meant to you.
Yeah, I think as just on a fundamental level, when we talk about environment, just from an environmental space, we know what green space does for people. So you take a 16-year-old from Brooklyn, New York, with the concrete, with the buildings, with the cars, and put them in the Poconos, Pennsylvania, where there are trees, where there's grass, where there's fresh air. That right there just does something to create endorphins in me, right? And like serotonin, and just that alone. We're not even talking about the social component of it, right? Just that does something to bring peace and calm into one's life, and oxygen into my mind, and the ability to think and rationalize and create. So there's that part of the environment that we focus a lot on, right? The environmental part. Then there's the social part, right? So me being removed from a place of abject poverty, right? So in my community, I was surrounded by people that had less, were struggling to eat, were struggling to survive. Now, granted, my mother was a nurse, so I never missed a meal in my entire life. But when I walked outside my door, all of my peers, most of my peers were struggling. So when I was removed from that environment and went into the Poconos, people weren't struggling at the same levels, if that
Mm.
makes sense. I mean, people knew where their next meals were coming from.
Absolutely. And I think the concept of being exposed to know what is possible, right? Like
That's right.
I remember when I first got involved with United Way, I believe it was Marcy Lesko who said to me, people only know what they know within a 4-block radius. So
That's
if you're
right.
never exposed to what opportunities are out there with education, with work, how do you dream? How do you hope? How do you
That's
come
right.
up with what your future looks like? And I think it's so interesting that you moved and the environment changed, but you still continued. You said you had that part of you that wanted to find or fulfill education, despite education being hard for you. Tell us what you pursued and what do you think that was all about? Because generally when things are hard, most people sort of say, I'm just not going to do that thing.
So I think that education was hard, but it wasn't harder than the alternative, right?
Mm.
So I mean, so you can just pull out a calculator and do the math, or you can. I mean, I've always been kind of somewhat of a researcher, right? So I can always look at the statistics that every year of education that you get, you make more money, you live longer, you find a level of happiness, so to speak, or options, right? Alternatives, so to speak. You put yourself in a different network. So I think that was part of the drivers. I wanted a different life. I was talking to one of my aunts recently that said to me, "You were always like," she said, even at 3 and 4 years old, I would walk down a block and say, "Why does our community have to be like this?"
Mm.
Now think about this. This is the same kid the school said didn't speak, and she said, "You would have my hand and you would say, why is this litter here? Why is that there?" She said, "I would talk to her about the conditions, that I wanted better conditions in the community." So I did know over my life that through education is one of the ways you can improve your life and the life of those around you in your community. So I think I had that driver there. And again, my mother constantly pushing education on us.
That balance of nature and nurture, right? There was something in you that just knew, and
Yeah.
there was that influence of the environment around you. I want to talk a little bit about your early career. You started as a co-executive director, I believe, at the Conflict Resolution Center. Um, what was that job, and what did you learn from it? What have you taken forward with you today?
Probably the most rewarding or educating job that I ever had, right? So I started off as a volunteer. I was in community college. I walked past this sign that said, become a certified mediator or something like that. And it caught my attention because, again, like I said, I grew up in Crown Heights. So I grew up during the time where there was like this racial unrest. There was like a race riot that went on. And mediators came in, I always wanted to find better ways of problem solving. And I kind of saw it in mediation. So I became a certified mediator. I volunteered for the center. I started consulting with them. They hired me as a youth coordinator. Then they brought me on as the co-director of the program. And I learned there how much natural ability I had for problem solving, for relationship building, for communication, and how I could utilize my past and my skills to help people, to heal myself, to heal my community, and to help people.
It's interesting you mentioned about healing yourself, because I think that the journey of helping others, we always hear you end up receiving more than you give. And did you find
Mm.
that as your experience? And also, did that experience help you on the track of knowing that sort of social services and working with your community was going to be your calling?
I think it was the place that I could be most authentic.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I struggled a lot, and I still do sometimes, right, with this idea of my past, so to speak. But it's somewhere where I make sense as my full self, where I don't have to leave my history outside, where I can. And then I had a lot of struggles at that time too. Even though I was excelling in my career, I wrestled with something we call like survivor's guilt. Like I was the only one in the room, and I didn't know how to navigate and manage that, right? Like just like all of my friends, were being incarcerated, were dying, like, and I'm moving forward in my life, and there's a guilt that comes with that. Like I survived what most hadn't. Even when I think about my household that I was reared in, everyone in my home has passed, like that I grew up in, right? And then even my second home in Pennsylvania, everyone has passed. So throughout my journey, I'm sitting here like, why am I still here? It's like this existential conversation I'm constantly having with myself. And I think that social service space can be healing. It's very therapeutic. I mean, I was a therapist, so I went through therapy to become a therapist. Um, Problem solving, helping other people learn to problem solve. I'm learning how to problem solve. And then also rationalizing, I was continuing to make poor choices, right? So I'm trying to rationalize the poor choices I make. Well, I'm doing good, so I can do wrong. And, it was like,
But that's such a truth for so many, I think, Hasshan, right? Like we have It's sort of the devil angel concept on the shoulder, right?
Mm,
We're making hundreds of choices every single day. We're trying to live in authenticity. We're trying to make a difference, and yet we're still battling demons, whatever they are,
that's
within
right.
ourselves. And what is your advice to people who are going through that, which really to me is all people? And if you're listening and you don't think it's you, you're probably not really in touch with reality, because I think everybody has that to a degree. Yours might have been more extreme than what everybody can relate to, but that authenticity and balancing seems to be something you've been real about, and that's influential to people.
Yeah, so that's the journey, right? I mean, my advice is, 'cause I think everyone struggles with it, right? You are, whether it's the soccer mom that needs Percocet to get through the day, that's a conflict, right? That exists in her. Whether it's the church, leader that's being unfaithful. It's like we have to be authentic. We have to be authentic selves. Our values have to align with our decisions. We have to be, and when we make mistakes, we have to be able to have people around us that we can say, Ashley, I messed up. Like, who can you call? We often ask the question and say, 3 o'clock in the morning, who can you call and just let it all out? Everyone has to have someone they can be honest with, or else you're going to be making decisions in isolation and from your woundedness, right? So there are times where I've sabotaged my life because I've stood in it alone, rather than calling mentors, people that really love me, rather than telling friends the truth. And I've seen that around me. People will relapse and they hide it from the people that love them most.
Well, I think it's why having groups and areas that you can go. I come from a family with addiction, and so I grew up around, AA, and I grew up around
That's
that
right.
accountability and knowing what your truth is. But what's interesting in my adult life is I really had to get in touch with the concept that I enjoy, or I don't say enjoy, but was comfortable sort of in chaos. And so that calm, you talked about going to the Poconos and having that calm and finding that center is so important, but also you need to own it. How do you do that work? I want to talk a little bit about Promise Neighborhoods, and talk about the work that you're doing and how your life lessons have led up to this moment. But before we do that, we're going to just take a quick break. Do not leave. This is going to be the piece you really want to hear from Hasshan Batts. We'll be right back with Unscripted. Time to take your workout outdoors. Discover Lehigh Valley is a great resource for finding easily accessible nature trails with stunning views and challenging terrain. Whether you're exploring the Delaware and Lehigh Trail or going for a jog on the Ironton Rail Trail, explore Discover Lehigh Valley to get you started. Follow them on Instagram, Lehigh Valley, PA. Welcome back to Unscripted. I'm Ashley Russo, and I'm here with Hasshan Batts, and we have been learning about his life. Hasshan, thank you so much for your honesty, your authenticity. It's certainly what I know everyone who's ever heard you speak says, I could listen to Hasshan all day long, and I think it's really that. You have great messaging, but it's your truth that you speak that resonates. So I want to talk about Promise Neighborhoods. Tell us what it is, what it does, and who it helps.
Promise Neighborhoods of Lehigh Valley is a Black-led, anti-racist, woman-centered, liberation-based grassroots organization that is focused on healing and wellness. We do that through leadership development, violence prevention and reentry, racial justice and health equity, and community capacity building. So it's really centered in this idea of cradle to career. We want to make sure that every child that is born and raised in our community grows up ready for the next level of their life, whether that be their career, academics, social vocational training, academics, entrepreneurship, military, whatever it is they want to do next, they have those options, they have the support that they need. We always hear this notion that every child, research tells us, right, every child needs a one caring adult. So I tell stories of Mama Bats all day long. I had that one caring adult that loved me times 100. But when I went out into the world, she wasn't enough. So at Promise Neighborhoods, we say, and every child needs that one caring organization and community.
I
And in
love
order
that.
to do
So
that,
important.
every adult needs that one caring adult, organization, and community. So when you don't feel this sense of belonging, we're trying to create a place where you can belong. Our three goals are to increase hope, to increase sense of belonging, and to increase agency, meaning you can make purposeful decisions in your life and in your community. So it's not only about receiving, but also giving back, right? And my life play, if you think about those three goals that plays into my life, increasing hope, I had to have hope throughout my life to keep going, right? Increasing belonging. I had to find places that I belonged. So this is what I'm trying to create and replicate, right? Because I think about it, I say, what did I need? What did little Hasshan need that
Mm.
he wasn't receiving from his community that would have helped me make better decisions and contribute in a better way. And that's what we're looking to create right there, Ashley, is spaces where everyone, every youth, every parent, every grandparent across the lifespan says, I get a radical welcome when I walk in the door, when I engage with these people, when they call me, they ask what I need, they ask how they can help, but they also say, this is how you can help us, you know.
It's incredible how powerful that sense of belonging community is to creating hope at every
That's
stage. We talk about it with seniors often, right? Loneliness is really their biggest threat. And I love the work that you're doing. And I like the concept that it's Black led. Why is that important? And two part, how can people who are not Black get involved and help this organization to help our community thrive?
I love that question, right? Both of them. So it's important that I say Black led because one, it challenges your biases. You got to be honest about how that makes you feel, where the discomfort exists, and how uncommon it is, right? When is the last time someone said to you that this is a Black led organization, right?
I
So
think
so
people
so
are actually afraid to say the term Black led, especially if you're white. So I think we're living
yeah,
in a whole. So to me, I will tell you, for me, you have helped me understand and not only get comfortable with it, but really love it, because I love the idea that we're creating opportunity and representation within communities that's unique to that community.
that's right.
But I also want to know how I can help.
And so I'll say, right, it helps us all to be better, right? So I do a lot of coaching, and one of the questions I'll ask executives that I coach is, when is the time you've had a mentor different than yourself?
Mm.
And very few can say that they have. Like I can rattle off Black female leadership that has influenced who I am today, right? If you look at other communities, you ask someone, tell me about a mentor you had that's diverse from you. They can really name it. So one of the ways in which you can help, right, is learn to follow Black leadership. Like find leadership that is different from yourself, and it doesn't only have to be Black, right? But someone from LGBTQ community, someone that's disabled. Like what does it look like to have leadership outside of what you traditionally experience? The other thing is to invest in Black leadership, right? So we look at through philanthropy. We say, how do we decolonize philanthropy? If you did an audit of your giving, you would really see what Black-led organizations do I give to, and that doesn't mean it has to be Promised Neighborhoods. It could be across the country, across the world. Black, not that serve these communities, but that are led by the people from these communities. So when I say Black-led, that's not just me. That's when you look at our team, when you look at the communities that we serve, they are reflective. When you look at our leadership, they're reflective. All of the people that individuals and organizations often say they can't find, I have found. Like they show up, they work, they're brilliant, they carry the mission. So when people say, "Oh, we can't find diverse executive leadership," it's not true. When people say we can't find board members that are diverse, it's not true. The only way you can get the statistics that you get is by intentionally not wanting to open the door and allow people in the room. So another way that someone that's non-Black can help is through really being intentional and serious about and honest, authentic about where you are and what you want to do, like the changes that you want to make, and us talking about how do we go about making those changes to diversify our boards. You and I have been working together to diversify philanthropy, right? Like we have to be very intentional when we do that. We have to be comfortable saying the word Black, saying the word Latino, saying the word Ukrainian. I mean, whatever we're looking for, we have to be comfortable saying that.
Yes, and also I think that you're bringing up the point of whatever we look for, we can find, right? So you can
That's right.
you can talk about positive things and negative things, right? You look for the negative, that's what you'll find. You look for
That's
the
what you'll find.
glass half empty, that's what you'll find. So this concept that if we are looking for diversification, if we are looking for Black, Hispanic, LGBTQ leadership, we can find it is a real thing. And I love that you're promoting that
It
message.
exists.
And I just want to say personally, Hasshan, I appreciate your willingness to have the conversation. And I'd like to say to other people out there that are listening, we have a lot of amazing Black and Brown leadership in the Lehigh Valley who are willing to have this conversation in a real way without judgment. And that's been huge. I think that's
Right.
a major shift that I love seeing here. And I kind of want to turn that to talk about the Lehigh Valley a little bit. You were in the Poconos. Tell me about this region and the work you do here, and what it is you love about this community. We have a lot of challenges, but what do you love?
So I didn't realize how much I loved it until I moved back here for my third time as an adult. And then I said, if I'm moving here three times as an adult, this is where I'm choosing to be, right? And I love the Valley. So that really challenged me to really start to think about it. I love the people. Uh, I love the opportunities and the access, the diversity. And I also love geographically, I love the valley. So I do a lot of work across the country, across the globe. I can get anywhere from here, right? I can go anywhere from Boston to DC in one day. I'm heading to Philly in a little bit, right? Someone can call me and say, we got a meeting in Baltimore at 9 p.m. and I can be there without a thought. So I love that. I love that it's affordable here. And I love my neighbors, man. And the other thing I'll point out, we talk about this Black and brown leadership here. This place is like a hub for Black and brown brilliance. What happens is difficult for Black and brown people to succeed here. So what you have here is a lot of national and international consultants that are Black and brown that live here. So you have a lot of national success stories here that you might be in Tennessee, you're in Nashville, and you say you're from Allentown. They say, "Oh, do you know Camilla Green?"
Mm.
Right? Or you're in. I was in Des Moines, Iowa, doing a keynote presentation for a health conference, and they want to know about Phyllis Alexander. Like, so when you say Allentown, when you say Bethlehem, people that we think are ordinary are extraordinary when they leave here. And I think that's part of the areas that the Valley needs to grow in, to recognize the excellence that exists, but also that's one of the strengths that we hold that keeps me here, that I know is top level talent here that I can be in relationship with.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. You talk about top level talent, and we have a lot of amazing Black owned businesses in the Lehigh Valley.
That's
Talk
right.
to me about some of your favorite places. Like, what's your favorite restaurant, and what's some of the things you like to do in your very limited free time?
Yeah. Um, my favorite restaurant, I love Happy Sandwich on 7th Street. Shout out to Miss Carol. That's she has Trinidadian cuisine that is phenomenal. One of the best kept secrets in Allentown. Of course, State Taste Smokers. Shout out to Q and Veronica. Best barbecue
So
in the
good.
valley. Yeah, hands down. I mean, the list goes on, man. Right? There are a couple new African restaurants in the community. I mean, but like these are places that are oftentimes unknown, man, and the food's phenomenal and they're authentic. I mean, we have some of the best Dominican restaurants in outside of Dominican Republic here in Allentown too. Yeah.
It's
But
pretty great. What about you talked about green spaces and open spaces and moving here from a city. Is there anything that stands out to you as an activity or something you enjoy doing that's sort of unique to the Lehigh Valley, or at least unique to being in suburbia?
so we do know
Kind of
that.
cool to be, if you think about it, what people don't real, I think we often take for granted is we've got this Easton, Bethlehem, Allentown. They're cities, but we're really close to beautiful outdoor spaces.
That's right. Allentown has more parks of any city of its size in the country. Like so I love the park system in the valley, and not just Allentown, right? I love the park system. I love the rail and trail system. I mean, you ask what do? I hike, I ride my bike. Once in a while, Alan Jennings will get me out bird watching. So
Wow.
that surprises people too. They say, you and Alan Jennings? Listen, the guy takes me up into these trails bird watch. I'm a kid from Brooklyn. I've never been bird watching before.
I
You
love it.
know?
Always,
So yeah,
always expanding your horizons, right?
you
Trying
have
something
to.
new.
You
You
have to.
have to.
We travel a lot. Qatar and I love to travel. I mean, we do a lot of work outside the state, so we travel outside to do that. My wife is a farmer, so she gets me to get my hands in the soil constantly. We have a plot up at the seed farm that's called Promised Land, where we
Cool.
take kids from the community up there with elders to plant and grow and grow food that they cook and they give back to the community. So my heart is with the land in many ways too.
You mentioned your wife Katara. I just she's a force for sure. And
That's right.
how did you two meet, and what kind of influence has she had on your life at this stage?
So we met. Her sister is married to my best friend, who I call my brother. So I was the best man at the wedding. That's how we met. So all the family functions moving forward, we were both there. And it took many years for us to really get to know each other. Probably 6, 7 years, right? Before we even thought about dating. But that's how we met. That's how we got to know each other, gradually. She has had a huge impact on my life because Qatar will calm me and she will remind me, uh, like when my hypersensitivity or my trauma begins to show up, she'll just whisper to me, "Baby, you're a social worker. You don't have to worry about that stuff." So I don't know if that makes sense, but as the room starts to shrink and I think something bad's about to happen, she'll be like, "You're just a social worker. You don't got to worry about that." You
Amazing.
know, she forces me to enjoy myself. She forces me to put work aside. She forces me to travel just for travel's sake. She forces me to put my hands in the dirt, to take my shoes off and walk through the grass and feel the dew. To I hated the beach, or at least I thought I did. And she reconnected me with the beach, and I realized I just hadn't been in 25 years. She forces me to swim in every ocean across the world and just to enjoy life, right?
Well, I love it. You two are an amazing
And when I
couple.
say forces, she makes me do it. Like I'm kicking and screaming.
That's good. You know what? That's why married men live longer, because
that's what they say, right?
That's what they say. So we'll see. Yep. All right. I want to ask you one quick last question before we go into a little bit of a rapid fire round. You also have a podcast, correct? Right? Called Let's Talk. Tell me briefly, let's do a little plug. Tell us briefly about your podcast and the type of topics you address and why those are important.
So Let's Talk primarily addresses those topics that we're the ones that they say we don't talk about, right? Race, religion, politics, things like that. Those hard-hitting issues that you want to know more about, but that you're afraid to walk up to someone and ask them. So like our last episode, we had Keenan Hudson on there. He was convicted of murder at 15 years old, spent 15 years in prison. You want to know about that, right? Naturally, you're like, well, how does a 15-year-old kill somebody? How does this guy get out? What's his life like? That's what we're talking about. Every episode's like that. The first episode was called The Talk, right? What does it mean to be a parent of a Black male? And at 14, 15 years old, you're scared that he won't come home at night because he gets pulled over by the police. That's intriguing to a lot of people, but they're afraid to ask those questions. So what we're encouraging is people to listen, to be a part of the conversation, and then to carry those conversations forth into their workplace, around the dinner table, so that we can begin to heal our community and come to know one another.
Well, Hasshan, thank you so much for bringing important issues into the light, for making it okay to talk about them, for encouraging people to ask questions and be authentic. I absolutely value you. I appreciate you, and thank you for the work that you do in our community.
Thank you for always being a partner, Ashley.
Anytime. Well, before I let you go, we're going to ask you a rapid fire question. So I just want to confirm for our audience, you have not heard these questions, correct?
Correct. I have not.
All right. You ready?
I don't think I have a choice, right?
What is your favorite hobby or a secret talent that you have?
I would say exercising.
Okay. What is the best advice you've ever received?
Know the condition of the people and treat them accordingly.
Oof, that's a good one. That might become a Post-it note for me. All right. What actor would you cast to play you in a movie about your life?
I would get 50 Cent. I think he would play a good me. Let him grow the beard out. Yeah, I like 50 Cent's energy. I think he brings like, there's a 50 Cent inside of me.
I love it. Okay, good. Yeah. That's a good one. If you didn't have the job you have now, what would you be doing instead?
Probably teaching at a university. I love teaching. I'm a great teacher. I do it periodically, and it's very rewarding, and the kids love me. I
love that, and I see a lot more of that in your future. I would definitely take that class.
Yeah, there you go.
Name one person who inspires you.
Well, I just had my son Hasshan Wednesday, and I can't look at that face without him inspiring me. So I'd say Hasshan Jr.
I love it. Hasshan, thank you so much. We appreciate all that you do for our community. Thanks for being a part of the podcast. And until next time, everybody.
Thank you very much, Ashley. You be well.
If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel.
To see more of The Peak TV, check out our website, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and catch us on WFMZ Channel 69.